middle powers must act together because if we're not at the table, we're on the menu.
Somewhere Europe has to grow out of the mindset that Europe's problems are the world's problems, but the world's problems are not Europe's problems.
चुन चुन करके हिसाब लेना ये मेरी फितरत है.
Why should it be a problem if I'm smart enough to have multiple options? You should be admiring me.
भारत झुकने वाला भी नहीं.
The rise of India will be determined by India. It will be determined by our strength, not by the mistakes of others.
The old order is not coming back. We shouldn't mourn it. Nostalgia is not a strategy.
Hey guys, welcome to my channel. In this video, we are going to talk about the end of the rule-based international order as we know it. Because what we are witnessing right now is not just another war, not just another crisis, not just another geopolitical shock. We are witnessing the fall of a hegemon in our lifetime. That's right. Keyword is lifetime. Yes, history has seen empires collapse before, right? The Ottoman Empire fell, then British Empire declined. The entire world orders have risen and fallen many times before. But this time it is different for one simple reason. We are the generation living through it. And before we deep dive into this whole thing, if you enjoy this kind of analysis on global power shifts, trade wars, currency wars, the changing world order, please do like the video and subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to hit the bell icon. Now let's get into it, okay? So what we are watching and what is collapsing, or what we are watching collapse, is not just a geopolitical arrangement. It is the global dominance of currency, the dominance of a payment system. It is the authority of a hegemon. It is the weakening of the order that shaped the trade, finance, security, and power across the world. So, and the irony in this whole entire thing is that at the same exact time, right at this moment, okay, we are also watching the rise of the fourth industrial revolution, powered by the technologies created by the very hegemon now entering decline. Isn't that paradoxical? And another interesting thing is that it ends in a very region where it was born. And that's what makes it historic. It makes it even more important, because we are not just watching the end of an order. We are watching the uncertain birth of a new one too, along with the fourth industrial revolution, right? So let's get into it. Let's get started. Let's talk about the rule-based international order and what exactly is going on. Why I am saying that this whole thing is ending. Okay, so let me, as usual, share my slides. Okay. The end of rule-based international order. Why the post-1945 global system is not being reformed, it is being replaced. Now, some of you will be like, oh, what I'm talking about, this, that. Stay with me till the end, okay? Stay with me till the end, because normally I start slow. And then I pick up the pace. And once again, video is not about talking about some news or something. I am not here to talk about the news. I'm going to show you exactly how things are tracked, how you have to track the world order that is emerging. How do you do all that, right? So let's get into it. Now, if you look at this, first of all, let me open my pen real quick. Then I'm going to show you things that are happening. I mean, lots of these things actually they get ignored very easily, but it's very important. All right. See, look at this. Iran allowed the first oil tanker to pass through the Strait of Hormuz, okay, after the shipment was paid in China's yuan. The Aframax tanker Karachi carrying Das crude from Abu Dhabi crossed the strait safely with its AIS system active, becoming the first non-Iranian tanker to do so today without incident on its way to Pakistan. Pakistan, of all the countries, Pakistan decided to make the payment in yuan, that is Chinese currency, and pay for all this. And you know what's interesting is that Pakistan is supposedly or allegedly American ally. Now, just a couple of days ago, President Trump also made the call to allies. And he said that, yeah, we need your help. Can you help us? And this and that, right? So here's what happened. Every country has refused to help Trump reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Germany, what does Trump expect from a handful of European frigates that the powerful US Navy can do? This is not our war. We didn't start it. And if you ask me, he has a point. Point is very simple, that Germany has full-fledged US naval base. I mean, what do you expect? I mean, you are the big daddy of all. So you can't actually, you are the protector. So what protector needs the protection? That's what he's saying. So and this is a valid point here too, that US, what the powerful US Navy can do. So that's another shift. Okay, and Germany is part of NATO. Australia, we won't be sending a ship to the Strait of Hormuz. Straight up, no. Australia is part of AUKUS. AUKUS, Australia, UK, United States. US decided to give its nuclear submarine tech to Australia. That's the country that is simply saying that no, we are not sending anything. That's what they're doing. Okay. United Kingdom, reopening the strait is not a simple task. The UK will not be drawn into another wider war. Now, what he is saying here, otherwise, in the past, whether you look into Afghanistan war, whether it is Iraq war, whether it is Libya, whether it is Syria, all over the place, United Kingdom's one or two ships, whatever little bitty ships they have, they would join the war with the US. But this time, they are simply saying no to it. Why is that? See, United Kingdom is also being, I would say, posed as the country that is going to be, it will be the first Islamic country to have nuclear weapons. And it's spreading faster than, I would say, faster than COVID actually. Okay, and that's where the problem is for UK. UK's Keith Starmer, he is the guy who came to power with those votes from behind the scenes, and that's his vote bank. So he doesn't want to upset his vote bank by joining the United States in this war in which Israel is present. Okay, Israel is the one that basically said, let's go after Iran. If you guys remember that in early days, in 2001 around that, right? When the Iraq war was underway, actually. So there was this report that came out where the plan was to attack 7 countries, ending in Iran. Iran will be the final one. And it turns out that Iran is the final boss of this whole thing. Lots of countries actually fail to understand the fundamentals behind this whole thing, that Iran really does not need, the whole entire region actually doesn't need any kind of weaponry to really fight the war if you enter there. and if you try to capture it or whatnot. Why is that? It's simply because of all the oil wells, the natural gas wells, and all that. The whole entire area, the whole entire joint is a minefield. That's why reopening the strait is not a simple task. Because somebody was asking me on Twitter, hey, can somebody explain me with as a 5-year-old or something, like I'm 5-year-old, as to why it is so hard to open the strait? Why mighty US Navy cannot open it? Well, a reason is very simple, that it's a minefield. So when you are actually carrying a oil tanker or natural gas tanker and whatnot, then a simple drone will do the job. Game over. That's why. Point is that you don't want anything falling on it. Okay. Anyways, that's not the point of this podcast either. Now, France said there is no question of sending any vessels to the Strait of Hormuz, and France made it very clear when France talked to the Iranian foreign minister Arachi. Abbas Arachi, I can't remember his name. Mahmoud Arachi, I think Mahmoud Abbas Arachi or something like that. Arachi is the last name. So he said that. He he posted on X the whole talk that he had with Macron. And the talk was, Iran made its point very clear that they didn't start any war. And France's position was that we don't want to attack, or we don't want to get into any kind of offensive. This is just a defensive thing. We just want our oil tankers out of there. That's it. So they said there's simply no question of sending any vessels to the Strait of Hormuz. Japan, circumstances do not warrant military participation from Japan. Once again, there is one thing that is common in Germany and Japan. Germany is also a US colony. It doesn't matter. They may show the president and chancellor and all that mumbo jumbo, but at the end of the day, Germany is American colony. Then Japan, the same way. Japan is also American colony. South Korea, the colony. South Korea says, we are closely monitoring President Trump's remarks. China, silence. And the one country that President Trump was talking about, the dead economy and this and that, why you're buying Russian oil and this and that. That country, that's the only country actually, along with China, that actually got its oil tankers out of the Strait of Hormuz without any problem. And that's the only country actually that sent its warships into the Strait of Hormuz after talking to the Iranians. That is India. So now let me show you another news. Okay, another thing. And then we will get into our main thing. Look at this. And this is not just some random people, what I showed you earlier. That's not some random people tweeting here and there. Right here. This is proper news on Al Jazeera. Right here. European leaders reject military involvement in Strait of Hormuz. Pushback comes from this. I'm not going to read all this. I am just showing you that Europeans have rejected it. Then you have every different countries said different things, right? With this whole German thing, like this is not our war, we have not started it, which is very, I think, fair, because Article 5 is invoked when you are under attack. I mean, Afghanistan was attacked by NATO later on simply because Article 5 was invoked. NATO member was attacked. That's why. Whatever happened in Afghanistan, that was a different ball game, right? Now, so that's the news. Now let's get into our real thing. So the question that is no one asks that who wrote the rules? Who wrote the rules? Who enforces them? And what happens when enforcer exempts itself? And the answers are not complicated to this whole rule-based order. Okay, the United States wrote the rule, right? The United States basically enforced them, and United States is now exiting the role. That's what all this news simply means, that countries that were once under the United States umbrella, the security umbrella, those countries are basically now, they have realized that United States cannot provide that security anymore. So they have said simply what was obvious and what is pretty much obvious in the plain sight, that hey, we cannot do any, if you cannot do anything in it or in that situation, then what the hell we are going to do about it, right? That's the straight up answer. Now, the question really is that what is a rule-based international order? I made a video on it, okay? I will put the link down below, so please do go and check it out. I have provided all the details about the rule-based international order, okay? To understand why this system is collapsing, we first need to understand what it actually was, right? That's when you see the news around you, that's when you can actually make sense of everything that is happening around you. If you don't know what rule-based international order was, then you cannot make sense out of anything, right? So the rule-based international order emerged after World War II. And I'm going to be very brief about it. I'm not going to go too much into it, all right? But you will have to watch that video, the rule-based international order video from my channel, okay? Now, it was built on a simple idea that instead of great power constantly going to war, the world would operate through rules, institutions, and economic integrations. Rules will be of the West, mainly West led by the United States. Institutions will be the main institutions, for example, World Trade Organization. It came out of GATT, then IMF, that is International Monetary Fund, then World Bank, right? These organizations, these institutions, these were called multilateral institutions. Now you have to understand one thing though, before I move forward, that Western world, especially Americans, the American system, the American political system, I would rather say, American political system always talks about supporting the multilateralism. They're all for it. Yeah, we should reform the multilateral institutions. We support it and this and that. But they don't want a multipolar world. That's the thing. They want everything under their umbrella, because multipolarity. So the question is, what is multipolarity and what is multilateralism? The difference is this. Difference is that multilateralism basically is related to the system, the institutions, the economic integrations, the rules that exist that actually form the architecture of the whole entire system for its functioning. Whereas multipolarity is actually about the power centers. So when you have multipolar world, then you have multiple power centers. Like for example, there are 4 great powers now: US, India, Russia, and China. Then there are other power centers too, and one of the power centers is in the Middle East, and that power center is led by Iran, whether you like it or you don't like it. You remove the United States military power, then Iran is the most powerful country in that region. Israel may think that they are, but if you don't even have your own military industrial complex, then you are not powerful. Israel is, if you ask me, then compared to Iran, Israel is just a tiny speck in that region. Okay? So that's the thing. Iran is a regional power. It's a regional civilizational power. All right. Now, coming back to this whole rule-based international order, we said that rules, institutions, and economic integration, right? So, but behind those rules, there are 4 structural pillars of power. Okay, so those are the structural pillars let's talk about those first. Okay, number one is the United States security umbrella. Okay, then comes the dollar hegemony, then Western institutions and globalization lock. Okay, now security umbrella. What exactly is this thing? Right? Security umbrella basically was that world will be under American security umbrella, as in that the US will watch for all the choke points, ensure the trade security, that there is no piracy, no robbery or any other problems in the shipping lanes and whatnot, whether it is the ground shipping lanes, whether it is the water or the sea lanes. But it was mostly sea lanes, because covering the ground, meaning that you have to violate the territorial integrity of a country or sovereignty, right? But in the international waters was something that nobody could watch. So United States said that, okay, we will do all that. And how they were going to do that? They were going to do it, or they did it, by having 750 plus bases worldwide. Now, I'm not saying that all those 750 plus bases were full-fledged bases with lots and lots of capabilities or whatnot, but if they basically hung their underwear to dry somewhere, then they called it their base, pretty much. Okay, and US Navy basically, it secured all the major sea lanes. Then, and one of those sea lanes was Strait of Hormuz. So technically, this is why I was showing you all the tweets and the news and all that how the president of the United States basically got a big rejection from all those countries when he asked for help. Is because they said that you are the security provider, we are under your security umbrella, what we can do over there that you cannot do. That's why they rejected it, because the one job, there was only one job for the United States Navy in that region. And that job was to make sure that Strait of Hormuz is never closed. That was one job, one objective. One objective of all the military bases in that region was to make sure that Strait of Hormuz is never closed and Red Sea is never occupied by anybody else. The trade route, the shipping lane, everything goes uninterrupted in that region. That was only one objective. But what happened now? Can you guess it? What happened? What happened is that the very same system that was actually supposed to ensure the smooth operation of that region basically collapsed it. They interrupted the whole entire system, that too on purpose. That Iran shouldn't have nuclear weapons. You have 7,000 nuclear weapons and you're telling me that Iran shouldn't have nuclear weapons. And this is not me saying that we support it or we don't support it and this and that. That's political thing. Okay. But the point I'm trying to make is that when you are running a system or creating a system based on the hypocrisy, then it is bound to fail. Sooner or later, it erodes the trust of the partners and you lose it. Then comes the second, dollar hegemony. Now, what exactly was the dollar hegemony? Dollar hegemony basically was a system that was created in 1973 when Nixon removed the gold pegging of the US dollar. See, the financial architecture of the post-war order was established at Bretton Woods in 1944. We all know that story, right? For the most part, at least most people know it. And the dollar became the world's reserve currency, pegged initially to gold at $35 per ounce, right? Then finally, Nixon ended the gold convertibility in 1971. Sorry, I was saying 1973 earlier. Dollar did not collapse, right? It deepened its dominance. At first you would think, see, there are things we have to understand about gold pegging and all that. Okay? How gold pegging works is that gold pegging is only useful for imports and exports, for the international trade. That's about it. Because your national currency cannot be traded outside the country because it does not have that kind of recognition or the trust of the global system. That's all it is. Whenever a country removes the gold pegging and they print all that money within their domestic usage, then yeah, the gold pegging basically works in the domestic, it only works for imports and export, but it doesn't work on, it's not needed, I would say. It's not needed for the domestic usage. All right. So after the Vietnam War, when the debt was piling up, so Nixon decided to remove it. Now, when he removed it, then technically dollar was supposed to actually collapse. It did. Dollar didn't collapse, but the global economy actually started to collapse because nobody knew how to deal with it. It was completely new thing for the world. Even though gold pegging from their local currencies was removed during the World War I era too, when European countries actually removed the gold pegging of their countries. And I think US dollar did the same thing too. But in 1971, finally it happened, and then it stuck. Okay. Now, but they needed something to make this dollar useful. So they linked it with what? They linked it with the petrodollar. Okay. And so what happened? When you look at it, then by 2023, okay, as of 2023, the dollar accounts for approximately 58% of the global forex reserves, and which was like around 71% in year 2000. Okay, and this number is still very huge. And then Swift messaging network was used for processing everything, which has over 11,000 financial institutions in 200 plus countries. So any payment system, if a payment system will have this many financial institutions in it, then you know that Swift is being challenged, really. I mean, let's say China CIPS or something, or MIR or something, right? If it has around 11,000 financial institutions, or at least close to 8,000 or 9,000, I would say, right? Then you can say that yes, this is a solid challenge to the Swift. But at that time, this was huge, and this is still huge to an extent, right? And this gave United States the dollar hegemony. Now, the problem with the dollar started when they started to weaponize it. And to make sure that dollar gets used by everybody else, they created IMF and World Bank. So when the dollar was weaponized through sanctions, through tariffs, right? So countries are like, okay, we're not going to maybe not use it. As you saw earlier, that Iran specifically said that we will allow the tankers that will actually pay us in yuan. And it was Pakistani tanker. You know why Pakistani tanker? It was Pakistani tanker because Pakistanis don't have the dollar to buy the oil right now. So probably Chinese gave them yuan to use it so that at least somebody will be there using some other currency. Then comes the third pillar. Third pillar is the Western institutions. Okay. So the Western institutions, basically the institutions that were used for what? Power projection. The United Nations, the IMF, the World Bank, WTO, these bodies were basically presented as a neutral architecture of a rule-based international order. They said that, yeah, all will be fair and square. We're not gonna do anything. It will be good. It will be good for the world and this and that. But the reality is that the very system that actually created this whole thing was busy breaking those rules. So if you look at the actual architecture, the United Nations Security Council gave United States, United Kingdom, France, Russia, China permanent veto power. The 1945 victors permanently encoded into the architecture of global governance. And all these P5 countries, all they do is that either they are involved into Cold War, they are involved into colonizing something, they are involved into destruction of something. But these P5 countries have rarely done any constructive work for the greater good of the humanity. Now, the IMF's voting structure is weighted by financial contributions, ensuring Western powers led by the United States hold the decisive share. And what happens with this is that IMF loans are given under conditions that are decided by Uncle Sam. Uncle Sam says that, yeah, let's give loan to say Pakistan or some country, but in return we will ask them to do something. And if they don't do, then they don't do it, and they say no to it. Then what happens? Simply, all right, we're not going to give them the loan. We're not going to approve the loan. And here's the thing, that for those who don't know, okay, that if a country cannot return the IMF loan, nothing happens actually. You would expect that there will be some sort of collectors who will go and collect the debt and this and that, but no, nothing happens. Pakistan, for example, has taken IMF loan almost 30 plus times since 1990, and they have never returned any of the loans. They keep taking the loan and use it for whatever, and that's it. Most of that loan goes into our terrorist activities, stacking up the nuclear stockpile or something. But it rarely goes for the cause that it is supposed to go for. Okay. Then look at the World Bank. The World Bank has by convention always been headed by an American national, right? World Bank is just a multilateral bank that actually provides funding, loan, all that good stuff to the different countries. And all this mechanism was created to make sure the dollar stays useful in the market. The relevance of the dollar, the need for the dollar was created using these multilateral institutions. Now, World Trade Organization, for example, its dispute mechanism is systematically favored economies with legal and financial resources to navigate protracted litigation, a structural advantage for wealthy countries. Otherwise, what wealthy countries were doing is this: they were just going and claiming copyright or patent or this and that for things that are not even theirs. Like, for example, neem tree. There was some American researcher, somebody, they were actually trying to patent the whole entire tree. A tree that doesn't even grow in America, they were trying to get a patent on it. I mean, how can you get a patent on something that doesn't even grow in your region? So countries had to fight for these type of stuff. Okay. But anyway, so this is how these are the four pillars. That's how it was created. And then the fourth and final pillar was the globalization as lock-in. So globalization, see, early globalization, for at least the modern day globalization. It started with the petrodollar system. Okay. And this was actually, I would say, the most subtle system. Okay. Free trade agreement under American protection. it was not just like a simple, I would say, economic policy that yeah, let's send our companies here and there and do all that. Okay, it was basically, it was a strategic architecture. Now I will give you a simple thing what exactly it was. See, you send US companies to other countries, okay, and over there they're going to trade in what? Dollar. They invest over there, that money comes back to US market, the it gets invested in the US Treasury, Federal Reserve, this and that, and dollar recycling happens, and US gets the privilege to print more and more dollar. And then in return, what they were doing, in return they were providing the local jobs in that region. That's why you saw lots and lots of offshore, onshore concept came in, right? If you have worked into the system, then corporate America, then you will understand this thing, that how offshore, onshore, all that is because of the globalization. But there is a downside to it too, that these companies, when they went to some other country, then they made that system so dependent on them that if they left, then there was a problem. Probably it would be complete economic collapse for that particular country. Then also, these are the countries that were using, they were used, they will use, these companies were used by the US military system, the intelligence system, or whatever that system is, to spy, into espionage, to manipulate the social engineering and all that. Like you see regime changes happening here and there. For the most part, if you notice, you will see that these things happen through these companies. Like for example, Facebook is there. Facebook always is ready to advertise these things through their channel. Then you have, nowadays it is Elon Musk's companies are doing it. How they're doing it? Through Starlink. He does Starlink. You can find Starlink in Ukraine. You can find Starlink in Iran. They were using Starlink so that they can actually organize a regime change over there. You may like Elon Musk, that's fine, all that. But if your system is being used for something bad, then yeah. And that's where the globalization actually became a problem. Why? Because slowly and slowly, these countries, they started to say that, okay, whatever you do, you're not going to take that money somewhere else. That's number one thing. Second thing is that they said that you're not going to take that data from our country to another country, because these countries realize that actually data is the key here, the user data. And once that started to happen, then the cracks in the globalization started to appear. Countries that went to India, they became more Indian than anything else. They were not helping, or companies that went to China, they were not helping in the growth of the United States. So why? And that was because of the diversification of trade and all that. Because the globalization, at first it was the companies from the US that would go to other countries. But now, as the other countries' economies started to grow, like European companies, Chinese companies, then Russians, all over. So the competition started. There were competitors. Now the competitors were there, so they started to challenge that globalization as a lock-in system. And when they started to challenge that system, then it started to crack. Okay, so these were the four pillars for the globalization. Now the question is that what exactly, we talked about all that, we talked about this, we talked about all this, all right, and I explained all these things, huh? Let me see what else. The architectural dependency, dollar, yeah, so we talked about all that, right? So now the hidden assumption that broke everything. So what exactly happened, right? The unstated premise of this whole entire thing. So what exactly happened? So the unstated premise was okay, that the United States would remain the unchallenged dominant power and would continue to want the role. And both half of that assumptions are now false. Now, first thing that happened, the first came the question of capability, right? America's share of global GDP was roughly what, 50%? Let me show you this right here. Okay. So America's share of global GDP was roughly around 50% in 1945. All right. Now by 1980, it had fallen to around 25%. And today it is approximately 15%. Actually, not even 15%, it is almost 9% at this point in 2026. 2 years ago, it was 15% in purchasing power parity terms. Now, what exactly does that purchasing power parity really mean? Lots of people think that purchasing power parity means purchasing power, how much a country can buy and whatnot. No, purchasing power parity means the economic activity of a country's economy, how much your economy is active. And US economic activity fell from 25% or 30% to 9%. Right now, China is 25% and India is almost 17% and US is 9%. Just half of what the economic activity is in India. That's how bad the system has gone. Okay. Now, then after that, there came the unipolar moment, the period after Soviet collapse when the US dominance was at its peak, all that good stuff, which lasted barely for 15 years, from 1991 to roughly 2006, when the strategic disasters of Iraq and Afghanistan made the limits of American power visible to the world. Disaster in Iraq, disaster in Afghanistan, disaster in Libya, disaster in Syria. Okay, so all that started the question of will, if the US has that will. Now, by the time President Donald Trump arrived in 2016, actually, so in 2016 and then in 2026, a significant portion of the American electorate had concluded that cost of maintaining global hegemony, the wars, the deficit, the deindustrialization, it was not worth the geopolitical benefits. And the whole entire political game changed. The political slogan became America First. Now, what he meant structurally was the hegemon is withdrawing from the deal. Basically, that's what he was saying. When he said America First, the very first moment he said America First, it simply meant that, all right, whatever it is, whatever we are doing, this is not working out for us anymore. And if you notice this, okay, then you will find that President Trump has said this thing many times, that they're ripping us off. This is not working out for us. Oh, who came up with this idea? This is not that. So, and many times, even for NATO also, he said, though NATO is not working out for us. This is not, why are we paying for them? What good does it do to us? Same thing for the Middle East. Why are we watching these security lanes and this and that, right? All that is not that, oh, we don't want to do it or this, that. No, it simply means that, hey, how do we pull out of all these things with a face saving and without domestic turmoil? Because, see, if I will start to get into this whole thing, then it's going to get complicated. It's already 44 minutes into the video, okay? But I'm going to fast track this thing. What I'll say is this, that there is a lot more going on in the domestic politics of the United States than people see it, okay? And lots of those things basically does not allow a president to, up until now, to pull out of NATO or Middle East or pull out of South Korea or Japan or whatnot, these bases and whatnot. There are many reasons to it, okay? And that can create, if somebody decides that, then those things can create actually JFK type of moment. I think that should explain everything to you, okay? So now coming back to the topic, the three moments when the masks came off, systems fracture along fault lines, then everyone sees them at once. What happened? We talked about this three inflection points: Iraq invasion, rule maker breaks its own rules. We all know what happened in 2003: fabricated intelligence, no UN mandate. And this is a pretty standard procedure, actually. This seems like a very standard procedure in the system, that cook up some kind of story, the same story that has been fed into Iran situation. Iran has nukes, Iran has nukes, when actually in 1979 it was United States that were ready to give Iran this civil nuclear technology. They were okay with the Iran making nuclear reactors and whatnot. But now they don't want any of that. And then they say that, it should not have nuclear weapons, it's a terrorist state and this and but actually Osama bin Laden was found in Pakistan, and Pakistan's nuclear program was run by the United States. Then came the 2008 financial crisis. Western institutions basically they failed, and Washington consensus simply collapsed during that time. We all know that too. Then comes the 2022 Russia-Ukraine war. Russia-Ukraine war also was lots of in many ways created, or I would say more of a, it was instigated by the Zionist system, the system that has been wanting to control Russia for a very long time, its natural resources and all. And they put sanctions on Russia, then $300 billion Russian assets were seized, and this and that. Every central bank recalibrated. All those problems happened. And then 2022, that led to what? The multilateral institution, the BRICS and all. BRICS Kazan summit happened in 2024. Then the other three great powers changed their posture completely. They were like, okay, you want to go that route, let's go that route. You're going to help Ukraine with something, we are going to help Russia with something. Let's see. And that was the beginning of the end of this whole thing. And every central bank at that point understood that these reserves were not assets, they were just hostages, meaning that if you are keeping your assets somewhere in Western-led system, then they can be seized, they can be taken away, and you won't be able to do anything. So they came up with their own system. That's why they're coming up with the multilateral system. That's why India supports multipolar world and multilateral system. Okay. And there was a ripple effect after all this. And this sanction basically accelerated what? It didn't accelerate de-dollarization. In a way, it just made countries aware that this system that we are actually trusting can actually be abused. And countries started to focus more on the trade in national currencies. China basically accelerated CIPS payment system. Now 1400 plus participant across 110 countries. Now you have to understand, like this is why I said that SWIFT has what? 11,000 financial institutions. This one, China's, has 1400 plus. That is close to like 1/10 or so, right? This is why I was saying that when a country has, let's say 5,000 or 6,000 like that, then you can say that, yeah, that's where the real problem is. Right now, it's not the real problem. China is not even in the position. I mean, yes, it is growing, but it will take lots of time or effort. Okay. Then India expanded rupee trade settlement agreements with 20 plus countries. Actually, 20 plus countries, 30 plus countries, or 30 plus or so countries are actually using the UPI. India and Israel have just signed the deal to use UPI in Israel and all. India, UAE have signed the deal to use UPI. Then India and Canada are working on that system as well. Then Gulf states, basically yuan denominated oil transactions with China. Then rupee denominated oil transaction with India. Then Russians basically, they restructured their whole entire economy. 90% plus of trade away from dollar and euro settlement. And the weaponization of the financial system actually became the strongest argument for building an alternative. Okay. So, the question is that, okay, we let's say it is going away. So what is replacing it then? What is replacing it is it is a multipolar world. There will be more and more great powers. Great powers are going to cooperate and work with the regional powers to maintain the security, to maintain the trade, to ensure stability and all that. That's how it's gonna play out. Like for example, uh India, the pivot state phenomenon, right? So India is normally, other countries basically take India as a pivot state. The country, if India joins another country unilaterally, then the power shift in that direction straight up. So India's model is very simple. It's a multilateral, multipolar, good relationship with all. That defense relationship with Russia, strategic partnership with the United States, nuclear technology with France and Russia, all these are different strategic partnership with Israel, strategic partnership with Gulf. So it has all those things. Then Operation Sindhu 2025, the combat credibility established through that, right? So India's advantage with the pivot state, by being a pivot state, is that no single power can afford to lose India's alignment, and no single power can actually undermine India at all. Anyways, look at what happened to US. US said that, oh, we are not going to trade with you, your dead economy and this and that. There's the very Howard Lutnick, the guy who was actually talking smack, went to India. He goes to India and he apologized over there, and they're, oh yeah, we are good, we are friends and this and that. So let's do that. Old system versus new system. Old system was that, okay, you are on my side. If you're not on our side, then you are against us. That was the George Bush statement. Okay. And new system is that be indispensable to all of them. Work with everybody. Now, so what exactly holds a world order together, right? World orders are sustained not because countries believe in the rule, but because leaving the system costs more than staying. So exit cost under the old system basically is loss of dollar credit access, then exclusion of from Western market, loss of US security guarantees, swift disconnection, right? Those things. Then those exit costs are declining. Like for example, alternative being built, rupee settlement, CIPS network, Chinese infrastructure, bilateral security deals. BRICS is there. BRICS Bank is there. BRICS Bank is a parallel banking system to IMF. Then you have Asian Development Bank, that is the challenger for World Bank, like that. Then there will be rise of shorter supply chains. So shorter supply chain is going to replace this whole entire shipping lane security, then being a net security provider concept, the concept that US introduced, and the US wanted to do that, or say West introduced, and they wanted to provide the security of all the shipping lanes. Now with the shorter supply chain, what's going to happen is that each country will be responsible for its own region, and they're going to work together to provide the security. And it's not going to be very expensive either, because it is a shorter supply chain. So that's how this whole thing is going to pan out eventually. Okay. And that's how the rule-based order will eventually be ending, and it will be finished. Okay. So the old equation that was there was the American security plus dollar dominance plus Western institutions equals to world order. That's what they called it. Okay. But now what's happening is that all this is being, American security will be replaced by what? American security, this thing will be replaced with shorter supply chain. Dollar dominance will be replaced with what? Trade in national currencies wherever necessary. Western institutions will be replaced by what? Institutions like World Trade Organizations, IMF and World Bank and all probably will be, they will be there. I mean, nobody will replace it, but alternatives to them will be your NDB, Asian Development Bank and anything else. And then that will be called a new world order. What will that be? It will be a multipolar world order. Okay. And that's how things are gonna happen. All right. So this is it for this video, guys. I hope you learned something, you enjoyed the video. Please do like and subscribe, and I will talk to you guys in another video. Take care.